Sanchez, and the title to my chapter is From Tragedy to Hope. And I'm going to share a little piece of my story with you guys. I was born on May 4th, 1978, in Nampa, Idaho, to Robert and Marta Sanchez. My mom lived in Eagle Pass, Texas, and would migrate to Idaho looking for work. Mom was a hard-working woman from a very young age. She had to drop out of school to work in the fields to help her family to survive. My grandpa was a field contractor. Every year, Grandpa, Grandma, and all the kids would move to Idaho for the harvest season, then back to Texas. It was a pretty hard way of life because I was in and out of school, never being able to finish a complete year in one place. It was so bad that I flunked first grade for not being in school the minimum amount of days. My mom and I lived with my grandparents. My dad left the scene and pretty much abandoned us for reasons unknown to me. Dad lived a hard life. He grew up poor in a border town. His dad, La Chira, my grandpa, was an alcoholic and did not really contribute to the family. Grandpa was murdered on the streets of Eagle Pass. He was robbed and stabbed to death. So my dad and his siblings were forced to fend for themselves. Dad left home when he was 12 years old. He traveled by himself, doing odd jobs and state after state. Mom and I were really close. She was a very loving and caring mom. She was, and still is, my hero, the best mom in the world. I was about 5 years old when Dad came back into our lives. It was a great thing, but it probably changed my life for the worse. My dad, since I can remember, was a very violent man, dedicated to the gang life. He was a drug user and a heavy drinker. My dad was also involved in the drug trafficking world. When I was about 8, we moved back to Nampa, Idaho. We moved because my dad was running from the cops. He had gotten himself involved in some trouble, and we had to leave. So we packed up what we could in my dad's lowrider in a yellow 1977 Buick, and we left. By then, my brother Robert had already been born. We moved to the north side, the worst part of Nampa, and there, 3 years later, my sister Lorena was born. In Nampa, life did not improve. In fact, our life became even bumpier. Mom met the Lord and became a follower of Jesus. She came to understand that the life she and her family were leading was wrong. As my mom's lifestyle changed, so did what she tolerated in her home, which caused many fights between Dad and her. Usually, the fight would end up with Dad leaving or even us, Mom and kids, leaving. I still remember spending cold nights sleeping in the car because Dad would not leave. Besides those fights, there was my dad's dependence on alcohol. Sometimes when he started drinking, he would leave, not come back home for 3, 6 months, or even a year, sometimes longer. He ended up in prison. As for me, all I wanted was my dad. I wanted somebody to talk to, somebody who would take care of us, who would take me fishing or show me how to work on cars. But you know, it turned out differently. As I was growing up, I was exposed to the life of gangs and drugs. I would see so many drug sales that one day, after a sale, I got into my dad's stash and I took a joint. Then I went to my uncle's house and tried to sell it. So I was about 5 years old for my first tranza. I was always terrified of Beto. Since I didn't know my dad until I was 5, I never called him Dad. I referred to him by his nickname Beto. Beto was even more violent when he was drinking. As soon as he started drinking, my stomach would be tied up in a knot. He would go crazy, break into the house and hurt my mom. I remember this one time when my mom and dad were fighting. There was lots of yelling. My brother Robert and I hid and cried, afraid for my mom. The yelling turned to cries for help, then silence. My dad hit my mom so hard that he knocked her out. He started to panic. I don't think he had ever gone that far. I remember seeing the face in his fear. So either because he got scared that the cops were coming or because he thought he might have killed her. So he left. But before leaving, he gave us instructions. He grabbed a bottle of alcohol and told us to put some of it on a towel and rub her face until she woke up. So there we were. I was 9, my brother was 2, left alone to revive my mom. Man, I can't never forget that. We were crying, rubbing her face with alcohol, and screaming at her to wake up. And finally she did. She was disoriented and did not remember much about what had happened, but she threw her arms around us, and we just sat there and cried together.
Growing up as a teen in Los Angeles, California, I faced the challenges that many teens face today. I was born in East Los Angeles at General Hospital. We lived in the East LA projects. My jefita, my mom, came from San Salvador. She came in the 70s, and my jefito, he came from Durango, Mexico, around the same time. Both met and married in Los Angeles. I have 2 carnalitas, sisters, and 1 carnal, my brother. Because of our culture mix, we call ourselves taco, pupusa, pizza, which are the 3 foods representative of the 3 countries that we have in our blood. From East Los, we moved to Koreatown, near downtown LA, and finally my jefitos realized the American dream of home ownership. My jefitos bought a house in Compton, California, a beautiful place, where I spent the most important years of my adolescence. Out of all the places we called home, I do not recall one stress-free neighborhood. They were all in the not-so-good parts of town. Generally, we would have to walk school on the streets infested with gangs, drugs, and prostitutes. The one conclusion my friends and I quickly arrived was, we better stay together, carnales, and protect ourselves as a group. In other words, we had to find a way to survive. My friends and I, just like any other teenagers, had several emotional and psychological needs that needed to be met. So we began a quest to fill our needs, but only in the worst possible ways. The biggest need I had as a teen was to belong. I had a desperate urge to be part of something that would give me a sense of accomplishment, something that would give me, to be part of something that would recognize me as a person. I wanted to be part of something that would value my thoughts and my efforts. I wanted to be part of something where I would feel appreciated and loved. For me, it all started in 7th grade. When I first walked the schoolyard at my junior high school in Los Angeles, it was very scary. I quickly noticed everyone being part of a group. On one side were the skaters, on the other side the punk rockers, and on the other side the break dancers, the rappers, the gangbangers. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, what about me? Where do I belong? To make matters worse, I had no friends. I knew no one. The pressure started that same day. Look at his tight pants, they said. Look at his pretty shirt. Do you still let your mommy dress you? The worst thing is that their criticism rang true. My clothes were totally out of place. My Pele shoes